Oh hey, it's another Seiko diver modern reinterpretation. Not that there's anything wrong with that. In fact, there are some very right things about this SPB313. Reinterpretation. That's a term that Seiko uses a lot these days for its watches. Dozens of them. Reinterpretation basically means, hey, remember that old watch that people like? Good news. This isn't that watch, but if you squint hard enough, who could tell? And that works for me, and I think that works for most people. Only the hardest of the core want one-for-one reproductions of classic Seiko watches. Most people, including me, like improvements. Seiko and the watch collecting community have learned a lot since 1970, and I kinda think that modern watches should reflect those learnings. It's a little thing I like to call progress. And this watch isn't even a modern reinterpretation of one of the more famous Seiko dive watches like the Tuna or the 62 Mas, or even the Willard. This SPB313 is a modern take on the 6105-8000, which came out in 1968, and which is neither the Willard nor the 62 Mas. The 6105-8000 is kind of the forgotten middle child of those two more famous watches. To make a period-accurate cultural reference, this was the Jan Brady of the Seiko diver lineup.
Marsha!
The 62 Mas was Seiko's first dive watch. That came out in 1965. Skin diver case, lots of modern reinterpretation of this one, lots of them. And then in 1970 came the 6105-8110. This later became known as the Willard because Martin Sheen wore it in Apocalypse Now as the role of Captain Willard. That is, if my research methods are sound. Are my methods sound?
I don't see any method at all.
But in 1968 was the debut of the original inspiration of this SPB313 and the SPB315 and the 317. All of these came out in 2022, and honestly, that's what matters to me. Despite the history lesson I just gave, I don't care that this was inspired by some nearly forgotten reference number 55 years ago. If I did, I'd probably go buy that original watch, but I feel like the historical context might be important and definitely explains why this watch looks the way it does. Because Seiko is like a lot of other watch brands in that they seem to have a hard time developing and selling completely new designs. Really, I can't think of more than a handful of totally new dive watch designs that we've seen debut in the last few years. 41mm across, 12.3mm thick, about 47mm long with 20mm lugs, drilled lugs, 200 meters of water resistance, and this weighs about 150 grams on the bracelet. It has a sapphire crystal on the front and an aluminum bezel insert on the 120 click bezel. Inside is the Seiko 6R35 with 70 hours of power reserve. $1,100 is the list price, and I've seen them around new for just a little less, a little more than $900, or of course less used if you're willing to brave forums full of grown men arguing about the quote clickiness of the bezel, end quote. Thanks to the drilled lugs and the 20mm lug width, I gave this watch a try on the bracelet and a gray nylon strap, and on my glorious 7-inch wrist. I don't have any complaints about either way of wearing this watch. Now, I've seen people refer to this as the Slim Willard, and if you were paying attention during the history lecture, you'll know that only half of that term is true. This ain't the Willard, but it is slim. 12.3mm thick isn't truly slim in the large and diverse world of redundant timepieces, but on a toolish, vintage-ish, dive-ish watch, 12.3mm feels really slim-ish. And this 5-link bracelet feels really smooth and flexible, more flexible and smooth than other Seiko dive bracelets around the same price, and definitely below this price. The clasp has 2 micro-adjustment spots, which is fine, and it has Seiko's dumb dive extension, which is not fine. It's useless, confusing, and weird, so at least we have that in common. And I really like how this bracelet looks. It's a nice change from the regular oyster-style Seiko bracelets that are on other Prospex SPB watches. I really like how most of this watch looks, and the biggest selling point for me is the white dial. I love white dials on sport watches. I find white dials are easier to read than black dials because there is literally more light coming from them through the crystal, and one of the results of that is that you have much less reflection off of the crystal, or you notice much less of the reflection fashion at least. I also think white dials pair better with different kinds of straps and strap colors. I think you could put this on brown leather or a red nylon strap. I think that'd look great, especially red to match the traffic light style seconds hand, which is a really nice detail. And bless Seiko and its lume. Like I expected, this watch has great lume that's generously applied. One difference between more affordable watches like this and the lume on more expensive watches like a Rolex is that they're both equally bright at first, but the more expensive watches often tend to have lume that lasts longer. Now about that 4:30 date window. I don't have much of an issue with the placement of the date window because most of my annoyance is aimed at the size of the date window. I can't read this thing, especially when there are 2 numerals in the date. Now I know you're asking, do I have old person eyes? And it's literally illegal for you to ask me that. But could a younger person read this better? Probably, but they're too busy on TikTok and MySpace, hash brown blessed. The 6R35 movement in this watch is okay. 70 hours of power reserve is great. Plus 25 to minus 15 seconds per day is not great. There are COSC certified movements in watches for just barely more than the cost of this Seiko. So movements that are certified as being 3 times more accurate for the same price. But that's just how Seiko do, and I can't help you with that much. So for $1,100, this watch has a few strengths and a few weaknesses. The movement and the clasp are the weaknesses for me. The biggest strengths for me are its looks and its dimensions, and its versatility, which is partly a function of its looks, but also its water resistance and its build. I think this could be a very good daily watch for most people who don't care a lot about accuracy. This is not too big to be impractical every day. It's not too stylized that it can't be worn for most occasions and most conditions. This could go on all my daily adventures with me, from my casual morning coffee to my formal evening frozen pizza. The SPB313 isn't a legend, it's not iconic or groundbreaking, and it probably isn't anyone's grail. It's not the most exciting dive watch that Seiko ever made, but after wearing this for a bit, I kinda think that's the point. Not everything has to scream for attention, some things just work and work well, and maybe we should all aspire to the same.